From KPRC Channel 2, this is Houston Newsmakers with Khambrel Marshall.
Good morning. Welcome to Houston Newsmakers, where the main topic is the election of Donald Trump as the 45th president of the United States. To say that many did not see this coming would be an understatement. Almost all of the polls showed Trump losing prior to Election Day, but it was the support of mostly rural and mostly white voters that boosted Trump to victory. Latino and black voters, while voting substantially for Hillary Clinton, did not provide enough support to offset the votes that resulted in upsets in many states that had previously been Democrat. Let's discuss. Gary Pollard is the editor of Texas Review, Texas Conservative Review, and former chair of the Harris County Republican Party. Dallas Jones is a political analyst, and he has also run campaigns, though not in this cycle. And Jay Aiyer is assistant professor in the Mickey Leland School of Public Affairs at Texas Southern University. Almost a week has passed since the election. So has it sunk in, and what do you think is going to be going forward from this?
Well, I think it was a testament, I think, to Trump's hard work, bringing out blue-collar voters. I would call them old Reagan Democrats, who turned out in record numbers. He also, by the way, got a record number, exceeded Romney with minority voters, which is kind of surprising when you think about it, but still, I think, a surprise. Only poll that was consistently telling us Trump was going to win was the Los Angeles Times USC poll that said all along he was going to win. And interesting, I think the Clinton campaign had an inkling it was in trouble because they canceled their victory fireworks 3 days before election night. So I think they might have known it was going to be tough.
What is your thought?
Well, I think it's a testament to where we are in the country at this time, the sentiment of many that feel as though they've been left out over the last 8 years in the Obama era of American politics. And I think mostly rural and mostly white voters felt as though the last 8 years did not reflect them and their families. And I think, Donald Trump was able to really, harness that energy, and that catapulted him into the presidency.
Is there any chance how easy or difficult it's going to be for Mr. Trump to harness what seems to be energy and take in the direction that the country can embrace?
Well, I mean, I think as far as the policy side, I think it's going to take some time to figure out exactly what direction he wants to take. I think that's part of the issue with him, is that there's sort of a lack of direction, specifically in terms of what he wants to do. But in terms of the overall numbers, there's a couple things to think about. One is this was a low turnout election. This was the lowest number of total voters since 2000, smaller than 4, 8, or 12. And then Hillary Clinton is going to end up with close to 1 million more votes. She won the popular vote. 6 of the last 7 elections, the Democratic candidate has won the popular vote. This was really an isolated six states really caused this change, right? And so what you had is the industrial Midwest shifted in large part because of a strong turnout among non-college educated Anglo males that voted disproportionately for her.
And clearly his campaign was unlike any we've seen in quite some time. Uncharacteristic and adversarial tone has sparked post-election reaction like we've rarely seen as well. Protests in cities across America, and what seemed like spontaneous acts spread to many cities as people vented their frustrations about the election. And if nothing else, it's a visible illustration about the challenge of getting everybody to come together.
Right, and I want to give Secretary Clinton credit, because I think she gave a very fine concession speech and talked about bringing the country together. And I think that Donald Trump now needs to go from the campaigner and at some point agitator as a campaigner to a statesman. Can he make that transition? So I think that the American people all believe that they have a stake in this presidency. And that is going to have a voice. And this is a challenge for him, because Donald is, of course, used to be in the flamboyant reality TV star, and this is an entirely different role. And that'll be the interesting thing to say, because if you continue with the rhetoric that I think causes concern among some voters, that's going to make it difficult to have the country together. So I think we need to see him do the pivot. We kept talking about, you remember we talked about the pivot going back during the primaries. Well, he'll pivot after he gets the nomination. Well, that didn't really happen. Well, will he pivot after he gets elected? We will see.
Here's an example of some of the angst that some people are feeling. Monica Rohr is a Houston Chronicle writer. She's an investigative journalist, and she wrote a piece last week that focused on how to talk to her children about the election. And some of this sums up the way that many people feel, especially the immigrants and non-white. She writes, "I'm a Latina immigrant. My husband and daughters are black. He and I are both journalists. And Donald Trump, the man who wrangled his his way to the presidency by calling Mexicans rapists, by denigrating the contributions of immigrants and refugees, by vowing to bring back the discriminatory practice of stop and frisk by referring to women in the basis of terms and bragging about groping them without consent, is President-elect of the United States. What's more, millions of my fellow citizens voted to put him there. That kind of sentiment is out there, is it not, Dallas?
That's correct. And I think the number one priority of this administration going in is to heal this country. There are protests going on in major American cities across the country. The peaceful transition of power that we value is not what's being reflected to the rest of the world. There is a concern, a grave concern across our allies across this world. And so he has to put people at ease that my campaign rhetoric is just rhetoric, and that I'm going to govern with the interests of everyone else that believe in the promise of this country.
Jay, yeah, I think we've seen many times before when presidential candidates or any kind of candidate, once they run, they know they have to govern now. In this case, you have the entire government. You have both houses of Congress. So that, in some cases, presents a challenge, but it also presents a pretty good opportunity for the Republican Party, does it not?
Well, it does. And I think from a governance perspective, they have the ability to do essentially what it is they want to do in putting forth their agenda. So as it relates to reforms on health care, as it relates to whatever changes he wants to make related to immigration, related to climate change legislation or regulatory reform, tax reform, all of that he can implement. The challenge, I think, is that Donald Trump, the president-elect, tends to speak in sort of broad brushes. And I think when you get sort of drilling down to the detail is where it's historically been an issue. We had talked about this before related to his lack of specificity on policies. So I think some of the things that will reassure people will be who he surrounds himself with, the role of the vice president, who is a well-respected from a governance perspective, and how he is able to reach out, because as Dallas pointed out, the rhetoric leading up to this, there's never been a pivot, as Gary said, and that's what concerns people, because he's essentially been rewarded to some extent for not moderating his tone. Whether the substance changes is one thing, but the tone hasn't changed.
We're going to keep it here and continue to talk about this process, the elections locally, and they were very much impacted as well locally because of what was going on at the top of the ticket. Shape up in Harris County and what it means for millions of Houstonians. That's next when Houston Newsmakers continues. All right, let's look at the election by the numbers. President-elect Trump got the electoral votes he needed to win the presidency. But like in 2000 when George W. Bush won over Al Gore, Hillary Clinton won the popular vote. Locally, it was a huge win for Clinton in Harris County, and she also won Fort Bend by an impressive margin. Some of the down tickets here in this area locally were impacted by that for sure. Kim Ogg for a lot of the Democrats won, including at the top of the ticket, Kim Ogg over Devin Anderson.
The Democrats won every countywide race in Harris County, though I will say Kim Ogg, given the numbers, would have won no matter what would have happened with the presidency. She was fated to win this race with a really good campaign, and with Devin Anderson's decisions that I think hobbled her ability to be successful.
Well, coupled with what's going on, since you're here and you're a former Harris County Republican Party bigwig, and you still are hooked into that, what kind of position does that leave the party in Harris County?
Well, as my friend on the panel said, Jay, it's the worst defeat for Republicans in 40 years. Inexplicably, we lose every countywide race in a year where Donald Trump had coattails around the country for Republicans. But one of the things our local party didn't do is really show any support for Trump, and I think it reflected in the numbers. And also give credit to the Democrats and the allies on the Democratic side. They did a fabulous job with early ballot applications, beat the Republicans 4-1, beat the Republicans in early voting, and beat the Republicans on the day vote. So Democrats get credit. Hillary Clinton gets an assist. I still think the Republicans could have had a mixed bag this year, kind of like 2012, where they won about half the judicial races with an effective local campaign that you talked about, the courthouse to the White House, but they didn't do that.
Okay, the results are what they are. What does it mean for the actual governance now going forward with Kim Ogg and the DAs? What kind of real impact or difference is anybody going to feel as a result?
Well, I think the people of Harris County should be very excited that it'll be a progressive agenda to really make some impacts that have been needed that have needed to happen here in Harris County. Reform of our bail system, a change and shift in how we treat low-level marijuana cases, change in how we manage the Harris County Jail, which has just been a nightmare for the people of Harris County. You know, we've heard this word flowing around the national press. You know, I think this was a mandate. I think it was a mandate by the people of Harris County that they want to change in their government. When your DA's office is broken, your jail is broken, it's time for a change.
Well, you know, we do hear that mandate. Now that you said that, mandate, electoral mandate in terms of the electoral college, but in terms of the popular vote, not so much. We are still a country that's really divided across the middle. What kind of challenge is that going to make for everybody, really? Because all the governments need to work together toward the betterment of this country.
Yeah, I mean, you most certainly did not have a mandate in an electoral sense for the president-elect. I mean, he didn't win the popular vote. More people voted against him than voted for him. Here locally, to Dallas's point, it was a tremendous day for Democrats. I mean, to win all 24 judicial seats, the biggest victory since 1976. But here's a couple of things to remember. By and large, we didn't have a strong turnout in terms of the election, right? What we saw was the beginning of I think, a permanent demographic shift that's occurring in the county. It becomes very, very difficult because when you look at who is voting, who lives in the county, we know that the population is fundamentally shifting. You're seeing fewer and fewer older Anglo voters, more and more minority voters. But as overall, our overall turnout was about the same on a percentage basis. We didn't have sort of historic turnouts. So this is really a structural change, and you have a built-in advantage now, I think, locally for Democrats, around 5-6 points.
You know, the Democrats have been thinking for a while now optimistically. I remember I had some people on, and Dwight Borkins was talking about the state turning purple or whatever, and they said, no, that's not going to happen. Your sense on what's going on, because I saw you smirk when he said that we have this fundamental change.
I don't think there's a fundamental change. I think that the Democrats ran a better campaign locally. I think they did a better job of getting their voters out. You know, nationally, we had historic evangelical turnout for Republicans, but not locally. Nationally, we had historic white turnout for Republicans, but we didn't locally. Nationally, we had historic turnout among minorities for Trump, and locally, no, because the Republican Party dropped the ball. Now, part of that was Democrats had some attractive candidates. Their two main candidates, Ed Gonzalez and Kim Ogg, were very attractive, and our major candidates had issues. You know, I think the best way to describe it, the Democrats' retort to the Republican Party slogan, Harris County works, was, not so. Harris County's not working. It's not working when a rape victim gets locked up and attacked. It's not working when you lose evidence. It's not working when the jail's dysfunctional. So that message, the Republican Party's message, reinforced the message the Democrats were saying.
So you're basically saying, okay, all it takes is just getting back together, and the next election cycle, there could be a different outcome.
Absolutely.
You, Senator, I saw your face, and I just kind of read your face and said, not so fast.
First of all, let's point out that the Harris County Democratic Party has made significant gains since 2008. The demographics of the county is changing. 2008, obviously, there was a national lambasting in 2010 on the coattails of Obamacare and the country's sentiment about it. 12, there were gains, and here we are in 16, where we've had the most gains that we've ever had in Harris County. But there is one thing that I definitely want to clarify. You know, Donald Trump did not have this large minority support that Gary continues to point out in this conversation compared to Romney. You know, he did better than Romney with Hispanics, which was surprising. He did 29% to Romney's 27%. But the African-American community, which is part of that minority community, voted heavily against Donald Trump to the tune of some 98%. So, you know, he didn't have a lot of support across the board from minorities.
Last word, Jay, going forward, your sense about how soon the country will be able to coalesce and move forward.
I don't know. I think that's really up to the president-elect to some extent. This isn't 2000 in the sense where people were questioning the process. These protests that you're seeing are really about sort of the character and nature of who the president-elect is. So it's going to be incumbent upon him, I think, to reach out and say and reassure people that things are going to be moving in the right direction.
Well, I appreciate you guys coming in this morning. Tremendous good insight. I've learned from all of you. It's fabulous.
Well, Khambrel, we all agree that you're a great host.
Thank you.
We agree on that.
Thank you. Good thing. Gary, Pollard, Dallas Jones, Jay Aiyer, thank you so much for coming in. We appreciate it.